Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Ocean Slayers, the Bermuda Chronicles, which is brought to you by Wander Games. It's for 2 to 6 players, ages 14 and up, and games usually run about 90 to 180 minutes. Ocean Slayers is a competitive, mythical, open-world Euro game with a hint of luck and dice. It is set in the Isle of Bermuda, full of rich treasures, powerful ruins, ancient monsters, rival captains, and uncharted territories. Set out to explore Bermuda with your mighty fleet, discover a unique landscape at every game, build and grow your economy and resources, and prepare for battle to defeat the mythical Kraken. Every tile explored will offer treasures, resources, and powerful items, safe passage, or spawn various breeds of ancient monsters. Players and monsters roam around the board, which makes the waters treacherous, with monsters lurking at every move. Settle on resource islands and explore Bermuda to increase your wealth and territories. But beware of rival captains and monsters, for they can cross your path at any time. With multiple modes of play, the player or team with the most victory points at the end of the game will be the winner. Will you conquer or will you perish? So, setup on this one is variable based on player count, as well as being cooperative or semi-cooperative, or if you choose to play solo. Lots of different ways to engage with this game. I really like that. All the different tiles are going to be numbered for player count, so you know which ones to use based on which game mode you're playing and so forth. So I really like that. You'll always start with the Bermuda Cave in the middle. That is where the Kraken will spawn eventually. Yes, the Kraken. And there's several different types of monsters. You'll see the monster cards, and you'll have this event board. And as the events come out, more monsters can potentially spawn based on the different tiles that are in play. And eventually, when you get to rounds 5 and then 6, 7, and 8, that is when the Kraken will appear, and then will also do things, terrible things, to everyone out on the board. So I really like that aspect. The monsters, the ramp up, it really feels like it's escalating as you move through the game. So as you'd imagine, the game consists of 8 rounds, and you're all tracking that on the event board. Everything you're seeing here is all the upgraded components. They do have standees for these miniatures that you see in front of me, and the standees are beautiful. They look really great. So either way you play, it's just really a beautiful game. So, but everything I'm going to be showing you here is the upgraded deluxe components, I would say. And you have resources in the game. Your main key resources are gold, fish, iron, and wood. All those things you'll be using in order to build ships, settle on areas where you can get more resources, because there are islands where you can get wood or you can get iron, mining those every round of the game. And of course you have your main base of operation for your ships and everything you're doing, and those will be generating resources as well. And the bigger, better buildings that you put on these locations, the more resources that you will gain every round of the game. So for every settlement or island that you occupy, and you've got either a village, a city, or a metropolis, you can build ships. And you have several different types. You got the sloop, the cutter, you've got the brig, and the frigate. All of these are going to play into what you're doing, moving around the ocean, obviously, but a ship without a crew will sink. So you will have to get resources in order to build those ships, but then you also need to spend fish to recruit crew, basically, and then put them on those ships. You can actually put crew on the docks and have other ships come in and out and load them up and so forth. So I really like that aspect. It feels very thematic to what you're doing for sure. And you have this nice player board that shows you the rundown of all the costs of everything you're doing. So not only do you have the starting ocean board, but it's randomized every time you play, obviously. So the board will reveal itself in different ways, and different things will happen for sure. But there's additional tiles as you explore outside of the areas that have been pre-created, so to say. You will expand this world and explore even more. So there's lots of different tiles. Like I said, there's islands that you can settle on in order to get more resources like wood or iron. But there's also fishing spots that you can send these little ships into, the sloops, where you can get more fish, more resources, obviously, to get more crew and so forth. So I like that a lot. Obviously, there's tiles where all the different monsters will spawn. I love these miniatures. They're so fantastic. And these will be spawning on the board and so forth. And the player who has the first player marker will get to control those monsters for that particular round, basically just moving them around the board. But there's two different markers for this. You have the Kraken's Trinket, which means you'll be moving the monsters one space. There's some limitations to movement, like you can't move them onto the main bases or settlements of your opponent or yourself. And then you have Poseidon, his statue. If you're playing with this as the marker, well then you're going to be moving those monsters two spaces. It dramatically changes up how hard the game can be when you can move those monsters so far across the board. So there's numerous ways to get victory points in this game, and you do that by constructing ships or your different types of buildings. So for the ships, for the sloop you get 1 point, for the cutter you get 2, for the brig you get 3, and for the frigate you get 4. And then for your buildings you have the village, which is the simple building, which will give you 1. You've got the city, which will give you 2, but the metropolis will give you 4. And then we have achievement cards, and you want to keep an eye on these through the course of the game because they're going to give you lots of victory points, lots of different ways to get those. They give you 15 victory points in fact, and you'll see that there's numerous things here like the first player to get 10 gold, but you'll want to keep an eye on those. It is very crucial. Obviously fighting monsters is another way. Now in the top left corner of the monster card will show you your victory points as well as what their health is when you try to fight them in battles and so forth. And then you also have just gold in general that will give you victory points. And finally, when you're battling your fellow players, you can gather victory points from defeating them and so forth as well. So you're going to total all those up, and whoever has the most points obviously is going to win the game. So, like I said, the game comes down to playing 8 rounds, or until the Kraken is destroyed. So you consider each round an event, and at the top of the round you'll pull an event card, and these are going to be kind of global things that affect everyone. In this example, the first card we pulled is that everyone gets extra gold, but there's all kinds of different events that you'll be in play for that particular round of the game. And again, whatever event card it covers or monster that event card covers will dictate which monsters will spawn and so forth for that round. If those tiles are already visible on the board, you will immediately spawn those monsters. Which leads us into phase 2, spawning those monsters. So if you have any revealed tiles that have the monsters in question that have been covered by event cards, those will spawn on the board. And if there are ships there, you will resolve battles before moving on to phase 3, which is the player's turn. So here again, battles are going to be super straightforward, be it either the ships that you battle against your opponents or the monsters you're fighting. You'll see that the monster cards show what dice they're going to be rolling, and based on which ship you're using, you'll roll the same dice. You'll roll, it's basically a roll off. I love the dice chucking aspect for sure. You compare the values, defense, offense. You've got red dice for critical hits and so forth. The blue dice are for defense, and the white dice are just your generic attacks. So you want to make sure you go into battle with enough force, and you can have multiple ships in a battle. There's limits there, of course, but in general, you're going to be taking all those dice and comparing the values. And as you take damage, you start to remove crew from your ship. And remember, a ship without a crew is sunk. Then it's time for the players to take their turn. And there's really 3 stages to your turn. First one's going to be exploration and expansion. And then you're going to have settling as well as battle, and then finally gathering resources. So for exploration and expansion is just simply if you have buildings in play, you can upgrade them from going from the village to the city to the metropolis. Again, as long as you have the resources to do so. And you can also build bigger and better ships. Again, resources are going to be needed for everything you're doing. And then if you're exploring the map, based on which ship you're using will show your movement rate. You move out, you can reveal a tile and perhaps get some benefit from that tile, or just find a monster, or perhaps, you know, just find an island that you can settle in the second stage of your turn. Lots of different things can happen here. So I really like that, but not just the existing board. You can actually navigate off the board, draw a new tile, and expand the world even further. So in this second stage, perhaps you found an island that you want to settle. You have a ship there, and your ship will be sacrificed or basically converted into a village, and you'll have a little dock as well where you can place one of your crew there. Now, the thing here is that you will always sacrifice a crew when this happens. Any leftover crew can fit on the dock where you can potentially build more ships later and add them to the ships and so forth. So yeah, crew is going to be a key thing for sure, but you will always sacrifice the ship and the one crew in order to build or settle that area. And one of the reasons you do that for those islands is that it gets you more resources. And based on which level of building you have there will determine how many resources you're going to get. And of course, battles are another key aspect to this stage. You'll be battling back and forth like we talked about already, doing those dice roll-offs, comparing values, and reducing the crew off your ship and eventually being sunk, or defeating monsters. And again, you can battle your fellow players, but I definitely enjoyed going after the monsters. And when you do defeat those monsters, you get to claim their card, as well as there's some resources you're going to gather, and of course victory points at the end of the game. And the last part of your turn is just about gathering resources. So based on the settlements and the islands you're occupying and the level of building you have, be it village, city, or metropolis, will determine how many types of resources that you're going to be gathering. And then there are fishing spots. Some of the spots only allow for you to gather one fish, some have two, but you also have to have sloops there in order to gather those fish. Fish are important because you need crew. Then once all the players have taken their turns, it's time for the fourth and final stage of the particular round. And the thing here is that is when the player with the first player marker gets to move the monsters around the board. Now it's important to note that monsters can be moved into unrevealed tiles as well. So you have lots of options of how and where you move them, trying to position them to go after your opponent perhaps. So that's basically the basics of a round, but there's a couple other things that we need to talk about. Now, a couple of my favorite aspects around this game is there are some really unique tiles, and they do various things. And every time you set up the game, you'll mix a number of these in, so it'll keep it fresh. You never know what's going to happen as you explore this world. But let's take a look just at a couple. You have the ancient lighthouse. So if you sacrifice one of your crew to this island, then you get to move an extra space with your ships. And then we have Poseidon's temple. This one plays into items. So this is one of the ways you get item cards in the game. You can sacrifice one of your crew to this island to draw the top card. Now, it is considered holy ground, so you can't do battles here, but it is a great way to get item cards. But you can get item cards in other ways, like defeating an enemy's frigate, or battling monsters, or there's another tile of ancient marketplace that you can visit and get those different types of items as well. They're going to give you all kinds of powers and abilities through the game. Here we found a clockwork crafted by the engineers of Atlantis. So again, lots of neat things about these item cards. Just a fantastic add to the game, giving you powers and abilities that you didn't expect for that particular round of the game or play that you're in. So, those are the basics of what you're doing in the game. Lots of neat things as you expand your different abilities and powers of your fleet and go after the monsters, which is one of my favorite things, but also just occupying ace places and getting more resources is definitely a key thing in order to win the game. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen has been in prototype form, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, that said, this game has a lot going for it. You're building up your fleet, trying to get the right resources, and just dominate the board, but the thing I really liked is how the game ramps up. When you hit round 5 through 8, the Kraken shows up in round 5, but then every round after that, you consult his chart and he starts attacking globally and going after everyone. So it does have this sense of pressure in order to get things done and get those victory points for the end of the game, or even go after the Kraken, which he has a health of 30, so you have to really gang up on him basically. And you can do some semi-cooperative stuff to try to do damage to him. There are damage markers as you mark off not only him, but the enemies as well as you attack them and so forth, as there are multiple cards for the different types of enemies. So I really like that aspect. You really feel that things get dire and get faster and more ramped up, like I said. So I like that aspect a lot. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like something of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it from me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.